Joined now by Jackson Gatlin, host of the Locked On Rockets podcast. Jackson, thank you so much for hopping in. Really appreciate you taking the time.
So excited to be here for our little Houston Rockets check-in, man.
Picked a good time for it too. This is a good time. If I had picked a week sooner, then things might not have been so happy. But 4-3 record, lost the first 3 games in a row, but then win 4 in a row. Coupled with housing the LA Lakers in your building, just how fun has it been to just see this turnaround?
So, obviously you didn't want the season to start with that 0-3 record, but at the same time, there was a drastic level of improvement from each game to each game across those 3 losses that even had we done our check-in last week, I still would have been pretty optimistic about this team. And now we're starting to see a level of kind of validation in what Ime Udoka is teaching these guys, what he's preaching, this newfound kind of defensive identity that the Houston Rockets have adopted. And we're seeing it play out in a big way with these 4 wins. They were able to take that first win, kind of break the seal, so to speak, against the Charlotte Hornets. And then they were able to kind of snowball that into a pair of wins against the Sacramento Kings. And most recently, a big time win over the LA Lakers.
It's been amazing to watch. And some of the numbers behind these wins and the way that this team is playing have been really, really impressive. Just doing a little quick research here. 5th in net rating on cleaning the glass, 8th in offense, 7th in defense. I mean, come on now. That's tremendous. And I don't remember the last time I've seen Houston up in that level. That's probably like 2019-20, kind of James Harden era. You've got a lot of guys shooting above 40% and shooting above 40% as a team. Dillon Brooks is at 53.8. Jalen Green at 45.5. Like, has the offense been more impressive, or is it that defensive number?
It's definitely the defense, which I do want to give some thoughts on here in a second, but I'll give you a number that's actually insane to think about here, Ryan, is the Rockets haven't been, up until that win against the LA Lakers Wednesday night, they hadn't been over 500 record in 1,005 days, almost 3 years of basketball without being above 500 once during that stretch. So the Rockets, again, big 4-game win streak, hang the banner, have the parade down Polk Street. Like, it's seriously, this team has come a long way from where they've been these past few years, and they're not done. They're building towards something really special. This team is good. Like, this is no longer a question of, can this team be good? This team is good. The question is now, how good can they be? And to me, the shooting has been awesome. Some of the offensive production that we've seen, it's been a very pleasant surprise from guys like Dillon Brooks, who he's been playing out of his mind. Kind of feels like he got his bag secured and he's just kind of settled into this role where he's now your perfect 3-and-D complementary piece, right? Taking a deep breath. The antics haven't been as, the antics are still kind of there. Like, he was staring at LeBron during stretches of the game and all that, but at the same time, he provides, a lot of value to this Rockets team. Fred has been incredible. But to me, the shooting, the offense has been awesome, and the name of the game is basketball, right? You got to put the ball in the hoop. But shooting comes and goes, right? Offense comes and goes. You'll go through droughts where you can't throw a rock in an ocean. So what is sustainable, though, and what this team can continue to build upon is their defense. And we knew Ime Udoka coming in was going to bring a defense-first mentality, kind of that gritty, defensive-minded head coach. And so far, that's been the thing that's been the absolute standout, is this Rockets team is giving a ton of effort on the defensive side of the basketball. They are hustling. They have brought in pieces that are individually in a vacuum great defenders in Dillon Brooks and Fred VanVleet, who have now also elevated the team defense, that the Rockets are able to play. We're seeing Alperen Sengun play great defense this year, as well as, his insane production on the offensive end. We're seeing, younger players like Jalen Green and Jabari Smith Jr. taking strides defensively as well. And the number one thing for me is just their communication has been out of this world defensively, to where they're running a switch everything scheme for the most part. Occasionally they will switch 1 through 5. Predominantly they'll switch 1 through 4, which is kind of a very common defensive scheme in the NBA landscape these days. But the level of communication with which it's required to be able to make sure that you understand, hey, this guy's going here, hey, follow this guy here. It's like they're a well-oiled machine on defense. There's very few lapses in defensive coverages, and in the moments where you do see a breakdown where two guys maybe have a miscommunication and it results in a wide open 3 or a wide open backdoor cut at the rim, things like that, immediately you're seeing guys communicate and hash it out and figure out what went wrong so that it doesn't happen again the next trip down. The defensive communication has been really impressive. They're actually scram switching a lot, which is really impressive to see, because they do have Fred VanVleet, who they do feel comfortable putting him on some bigger players, but at the same time, you don't want to leave Fred VanVleet stranded on, a big man like a Domantas Sabonis or a Rui Hachimura down low. And so they've actually been scram switching at a very elite level, to where the moment a switch happens on the perimeter where Fred is then stuck on a big, you're seeing the wings immediately come over, whether it's Jabari or whether it's Dillon, and they're switching back out and scram switching on the fly so that he doesn't have to deal with that mismatch down low and not giving up those easy points. They've also been one of the best transition defensive teams so far in the association this season. And Ime actually challenged them after that 0-3 start. They were the worst team in the NBA as far as defensive rebounding percentage went. And now I think they're floating around 13th or 12th. They're like hovering near top 10. So after that challenge of starting the season so poorly in the rebounding department, the entire team has collectively taken that to heart and tried to rebound at a higher level. And they've actually won the rebounding battle the last 4 games during these wins.
It is interesting what accountability will do for you. It's interesting what
a novel concept, right?
Yeah, just caring about like how the process goes and being willing to take action. And I think, like we talked about, adding in the veterans, adding in some veteran voices that expect that from their team, that expect that from the group, and then adding a coach who clearly has made that a priority and has had success at multiple stops now in terms of pushing and elevating up and lifting up the young guys on their teams and making them into better versions of themselves. This looks like a new team. This looks like a different group, and a group that I think you start to see the young guys. It's instead of just potential, it's not production. There's some substance behind what's going on here. Which of these young guys do you find most interesting right now? Is it Jalen Green? Is it Alperen Sengun? Is it Jabari Smith? I know Cam Whitmore just went down to the G League, but who are you latching on to early?
I think it has to be Alperen Sengun first and foremost, just because he's actually been so far through 7 games. He's been the Rockets' best player easily. He's been their most consistent player across those 7 games, and he's putting up some insane numbers. I mean, I think there's he thoroughly outplayed Domantas Sabonis in the 2 head-to-head matchups with the Kings, and I get it. The Kings didn't have De'Aaron Fox in those games, but at the same time, just watching the head-to-head matchup, it looked like Alperen Sengun was in a class of his own going against Domantas Sabonis, to where he was holding his own defensively. He was boxing him out well, even if it didn't mean that Alp was the one securing the rebound. He was doing a good job muscling and bodying up to Sabonis so that others on the Rockets could secure those rebounds. And then when it came to his offensive production against him, I mean, Sabonis had no answer for him. Alp was getting whatever he wanted. He has such a deep bag of post moves, the pirouettes, the spins, the fakes, the turns, the twists, everything. The footwork is incredible. And then when you compare that to Sabonis, who has little to no bag in his offensive game when it comes to his post-ups, it's just kind of, he's going to brute force and try to, use just his strength and body you down and get right to the rim. I think there's a legitimate argument, at least in a vacuum, that Alperen Sengun might already be better than Domantas Sabonis because he's got better court vision. I know Sabonis is kind of viewed in the same light as a Nikola Jokic with that point center kind of role that he occupies with the Kings, but I think that's kind of a byproduct of the Kings systems. I don't think it's necessarily that just Sabonis in any system that you put him in is going to be, a 5, 6, 7+ assists per game type big man. Whereas Alperen Sengun has shown through the first 2 years of his career and now well into his 3rd season that he has some elite court vision, elite playmaking ability, just kind of this innate feel for the game as a creator, as a playmaker out on the floor. And it's been a wonder to behold how this Rockets coaching staff has really leaned into him as their go-to guy down the stretch, that when they need a quality bucket, they know that they can get the ball to Alperen Sengun. When I had the chance to ask Fred VanVleet kind of who decides when to go to Sengun or when to not go to him. And Fred said it's a decision that he and Ime make together. They basically identified that Sengun is their most consistent go-to guy. And then when they need a high quality bucket, they can give the ball to him in the post, and it's either going to result in a bucket for himself or fouls and getting to the free throw line, or the defense is going to send a second guy to him because he's the only guy on the roster right now that routinely commands a double team. And it results in good offense for the Rockets. So I got to say it's Alperen Sengun so far to this point. He's been the Rockets' best player. But at the same time, I don't want to gloss over the fact that Jalen Green has really come alive these past 2 games, having his most efficient game in that win against the LA Lakers, 28 points on 15 shots, really insane efficiency. And he looks like he's kind of coming into his own and kind of settling in to this new role that Ime has for him, where he's playing quite a bit more off ball than he ever has in his Rockets career to this point. And for this team to be the best version of itself, he needs to kind of be the tip of the spear, if you will. It really is very similar to the relationship that Jokic and Murray have with the Nuggets, where Jokic is the straw that stirs the drink for the Nuggets for sure. But there are games where Jokic is out there hunting Murray's shot for him, where he's finding the looks for Murray and getting him going. And Alp and Jalen have that similar dynamic where Alp can get the ball and can collapse the defense and then find those open looks for Jalen, to where he might be the high point man, but the guy kind of running the show, so to speak, is Alperen Sengun.
It is interesting to track, and we'll certainly have to track it throughout the year. Like, Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray weren't Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray in year 3. That's sort of something that people have to remember, and it takes time to develop that. And it is interesting. There was kind of an opportunity here over the between years 2 and 3 for these guys, where you didn't know if they were going to fully commit to that. You didn't know if they were if that was the absolute willing thing. And then for the Nuggets specifically back in the day, they saw a playoff series. They saw how those guys reacted in the most pressure packed moments, and they figured it out. Maybe this is something where Houston finally turns a leaf and they finally turn into a more competitive version of themselves. And those guys find new versions of themselves where they can even go to. And we start to see some real growth between the ears for those guys, in addition to just what they've done on the floor. Really exciting to be able to hear this. 2 more questions for you. Is this streak sustainable? What about this streak makes it sustainable versus unsustainable? What's happened so far for Houston through 7 games?
Yeah, I think I kind of hit on this earlier a little bit, but it's the defense to me. The defense is something that travels. Defense is something that will never leave you as long as you continue to preach it and work it and do all the right things that you need to do defensively. Because again, the offense will come and go. You'll have games where maybe nobody can hit anything. You'll have games where all the guys are on fire and you're going to blow out teams by 40, 50 plus. But for example, in that first win against the Kings, the Rockets were ahead for a large portion of that game, but then they ran into an offensive drought in that third quarter. The Kings actually wound up winning that third quarter 15 points to 12, so +3 for the Kings. But the Rockets were able to survive simply by, even though the fact that their offense had kind of abandoned them in that quarter, they were able to survive and only lost the quarter by 3 because they were also able to clamp down and shut down the Kings offense in that frame. So to me, the defensive principles of this team are going to continue to be, the foundation for success. They just got Tari Eason back in the lineup, who missed the start of the season with a stress reaction in his leg. So now that he's back in the lineup, the Rockets have this insane triumvirate of wings that they can throw out there in Dillon Brooks, Jayshawn Tate, and Tari Eason, the lineup that I've dubbed Clamp City, because being able to throw those 3 guys out there who are all switchable, who can all guard, multiple positions on the floor, and who all are insanely plus defenders. You put those 3 guys out there. There were stretches in that Lakers game where LeBron was seeing 2 and sometimes 3 of those guys all on a singular possession, where the defense would just collapse and he was getting no clean looks. He was getting some of the, forcing turnovers, picking up his dribble and having to kick it out to somebody else on the floor. And it's a direct result of those 3 guys and what they're able to do defensively, not just as individuals, but how well they complement each other when they share the floor. So I do think that this success is sustainable, because it's not just a flash in the pan couple of offensive performances that has carried this team to where they are now. It's stable defensive success complemented by a blossoming offensive force, or a couple of offensive forces in Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun.
I'm excited to track it. I'm excited to see where this defense kind of goes from here. Should be fun to really see where they go. Last one for you. Best player and best team that you, as kind of tracking the Houston Rockets, have seen so far.
The honor is going to have to go to, as much as it hurts me to say it, Steph Curry. It's just like watching him kind of, first off, the Rockets, I thought, did a pretty respectable job on him in that game. He was like 2 of 8 shooting or something going into the fourth and final frame, and they did a pretty good job. But then it's just one of those things where you make that one small mistake, and the Rockets had one error where they didn't switch properly on a screen on the perimeter. Steph hit that first 3, and then he hit another, and then another, and then another, and it was, before you knew it, it was 4 threes within the span of about 2.5 minutes, and the Rockets went from being neck and neck with the Warriors in the fourth quarter being down 9 in the blink of an eye. And Ryan, when I tell you that it doesn't matter whether the Rockets are winning 60-plus games or losing 60-plus games in a season, Steph Curry raining hellfire on your team hurts every single time. And so, of the 7 games that the Rockets have played thus far, he's been the best player, and the Warriors have probably been the best team that they faced to this point.
Well, we will see if that continues. I'm curious to see how Golden State continues to evolve.
He can't keep getting away with it, Ryan. It's been so many years.
It's got to stop at some point. It's got to stop. It just never ends with the dude. He is tremendous. So. But hey, he is Jackson Gatlin of Locked On Rockets. Make sure to go follow all of his work over there. Jackson, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We'll talk again in 6 weeks. All right.
Always a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me on.